Today we celebrate that solemnity of the Epiphany, and one of the things that we celebrate during the Epiphany is this journey that the Magi take from their eastern country to visit Jesus in Bethlehem. And if we pay attention to this journey that the Magi take, there's kind of 5 different moments to their journey. First, they're just in their country staring at the stars, and then they actually begin their journey when they start traveling to go to Bethlehem. Then there's a third moment when they're with Herod, right? A little resistance that they kind of receive from Herod. Then a fourth moment when they're before Jesus, giving him gifts. And then a last moment, a fifth moment, when they're going back now via a different way, as the scripture says, back to their country. Kind of 5 different stages of their journey. And in a sense, there's like a parallelism between the journey that Magi take to go visit Jesus and a spiritual life. So what I want to do is I want to go through the kind of the 5 different moments of the journey of the Magi and see how they kind of speak to us about our own spiritual life, own spiritual journey. So the first moment is the Magi are staring at the sky, staring at the stars. So the word Magi in Greek is magoi, and kind of refers to like astronomers, astrologers, or like scientists. So this is who these men were. And so they're very attentive to the world, to nature, very attentive to the stars. And as they're very attentive and consumed by looking at the stars in the world, they're trying to discern divine communication. What is God telling us through nature? What is God, the divine, communicating to the stars? In a way, it's a very contemplative act they're doing. They're just consumed by looking at the stars and wanting to hear from the divine. So we could think about what consumes us. We consume, like the Magi were, about listening to God. What does God want for my life? Maybe as we start this new year, 2023, and as we set goals, do we just set our own goals? Or are we thinking, Lord, what do you want for my life this year? What are your plans? What are the goals that you want me to set, right? Are we attentive to God's voice? Because, God loves you dearly. You're His son, you're His daughter, and He's always speaking to you, always. In your prayer, but also through many different things, through people around you, through the Gospels, through the readings you hear at Mass, through the homily, through events happening in your life. He's always wishing to communicate with you. So do we have this attitude that the Magi did, being attentive, listening, Lord, what are you communicating to me? What are you saying to me? We want to have this attitude of receptivity, like the Magi did, of listening to the Lord. The second moment of the Magi's journey is actually starting to walk towards Jerusalem. Once they see the star and they receive that communication, like something important is happening in Bethlehem, they take a step, they take action, and they begin their journey towards towards Bethlehem. Now, if you think about traveling can always be an ordeal even today. Just think about what happened with Southwest last week, right? And back then it was even worse. I just recently learned that people used to write their last testament and will, like back then, if they were going to take a long journey, because they didn't know they were going to come back, right? They didn't have the road system we have today, or state troopers, and a lot of robbers. They didn't have weather apps to tell them what was going to happen, right? There's a lot of uncertainty. It was dangerous to go on a long journey. And yet, the Magi, right, they see the star, they receive the divine communication, and they take action. They answer what the divine is telling them and go in pursuit of what is being told them, right? And so when we listen to God's voice and He invites us to different things, and He's always inviting us to different things, do we take action? Or do we just stay listening, saying, well, that's a nice idea, Lord, but I don't know. It seems like a hard journey. We want to be like the Magi and take action. Pursue what the Lord is inviting us to. Third moment in their journey is this encounter with Herod, where they encounter some resistance from Herod. Herod is a king, and when he's hearing from the Magi that there's another king nearby, he's not happy. So there's this sense of like this tension, right? And the Magi have to kind of discern what's going on and persevere. Instead of saying, okay, this could be kind of dangerous, let's just go back. This is hard, let's just go back to our country. We don't want trouble, we don't want to be killed because we're finding this new king. They persevere through the difficulties. As we follow Jesus in our life, we're always going to encounter difficulties. This is just part of the spiritual journey. And we encounter difficulties kind of from two main sources. There's more, but in a sense, it's from ourselves, right? Sometimes we don't want to do what the Lord is inviting us to do. There's resistance in our heart, lack of conversion, and also resistance from outside of us, right? Society or other people around us that perhaps see us wanting to strive to follow the Lord, and they want to discourage us, right? They'll tell us things like, oh, you're a hypocrite because you go to church and you're not perfect, or something like that. Or they see us trying hard to change something and they'll make fun of us. Or maybe they'll say, oh, you believe this about Jesus, how dumb you are, etc., etc. There's just much resistance that we will always have as we follow a spiritual journey. But we have to persevere, like the Magi did, in wanting to find the Lord, to answer to His call. The fourth moment in the journey is when they're before Jesus. And what do the scriptures say? It says that when they found Him, they prostrated themselves and did Him homage. Then they opened their treasures and offered Him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. So when they find the Lord, they prostrate themselves. What is a prostration? What does it mean to prostrate oneself? A prostration is kind of like this intense bow, right? If you were to bow yourself to the ground with your head to the floor, but you even, like, the bow is so profound that you end up actually lying flat, like with your stomach, with your belly on the floor. That's a prostration, where you completely surrender yourself before somebody. It's an act of adoration and of surrender, being at the mercy of somebody else, prostrating yourself before somebody, an act of adoration in complete humility. And this is what the Magi are doing. They find Jesus, and these are kings, right? Wise men, magor, right? Important people, aristocrats, if you will, and they prostrate themselves before Jesus. And then not only they do that, but they offer Him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh, right? The best of what they have, their treasures, they give to Jesus. And so we ought to do the same, give our gifts, the best of who we are and the best of what we have, to Jesus. I have two sisters, and my younger sister, she's been working for different startups in the past few years, startup companies. And I always love talking to her. It's just so interesting, just that world and just what she gets to see. And some of the ones that she's worked at, they're really small. So she gets to work with like the people with the money and the entrepreneurs, and because they're just really small. And some of these people have already had companies before, sold them, made millions, and they're doing like another company, and she's working with them. And she always tells me just about like the environment and what she gets to do, and like how much she admires these guys and girls who are just doing this innovations and stuff like that. And as I've heard her in the past, I am pretty amazed about like just how these entrepreneurs manage to do great things. Like they're doing this project, they have this idea, and then they encounter a wall. Like people tell them, "Oh, that's dumb. You're not gonna be able to do this," and they're like, "No. I don't care. This is a good idea and it's going to happen." And they just persevere and break down that wall, and they just find a way. Like they have this attitude of like, where there's a will, there's a way. And they just fight and like find fundraising, and they just do it and make it happen. People are impressed that we're able to make it happen, and they sell their company and make a bunch of money, right? But as my sister tells me this, because she's living it kind of like on her daily life, I've often thought like, oh my gosh, like if we as Christians were to have that determination, if we were to put our intellects and our passions and our drive at the service of Christ in the way in which some of these men and women put it at the service of innovation and making a company, which is not a bad thing, but they're putting their best, right, to make this thing happen. Are we putting our best? Are we giving our best talent, our intellect to the service of Christ? Or are we putting it first maybe for our secular pursuit, our personal pursuits? Like, oh yeah, I give my best to these pursuits that I want to have. And then I'll give something to Jesus because it's Jesus. I got to give Him something, so I'll give Him something. Are we giving Him our best, the best of what we have and who we are to Him? That's what we want to do, like the Magi did. And lastly, the last kind of moment of the Magi is that they go back to their country, and it says in the gospel, they departed for the country by another way. And part of the reason why they do this is because they don't want to go back to Herod, and that's kind of part of the reason. But there's also another significance in this regarding the fact that when we encounter Jesus, we never go back the same. When we encounter Jesus, it's happened to the Magi, right? They encounter Jesus, and they can't go back the same, right? They've paid attention to the vine. They've taken action. They've persevered through difficulties. They've put their best to the Lord after following these things, which is a spiritual journey. You cannot go back the same, right? Our spiritual life, it ought to transform us. And if we follow these kind of steps, we will be transformed. I often tell you that you are made and we're made for holiness. What is holiness? Holiness is a deep relationship with God that transforms us. Transformation has to be part of our life. And so I encourage you to be inspired by the Magi, to follow these things of being attentive to what the Lord is doing in your life, taking action, responding to Him, persevering through difficulty, giving your best to Him, and you are guaranteed by that encounter with Jesus, your relationship with Him, to have as a result transformation in your life, holiness.